Dave Chawner was caught up in the attack yesterday and helped one of the victims and joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Very distressing for you. You cradled this man, looked after him for half an hour while waiting for an ambulance and paramedics to come and treat him. Just talk us through what you were doing at the time and how you managed to help this
So
boy.
I was just on the way to the Odeon, to the cinema. And I was wandering down the street and I saw what I thought was just a shoplifting, and I saw people like fall over, and I thought they'd kind of bungled someone like robbing something, and then they got up and then they fell over again, and I heard shouting this time, and like anyone would, I kind of like ran towards it because I thought, oh, there's someone in distress, maybe they're trying to stop a thief. And then as I sort of ran towards it, I heard a car backfire. And then I heard it again and again and multiple times. And then I saw the police pointing a gun at someone that was on the floor. The police were incredible. They were competent. They were in control within
When you
seconds.
say that you heard a car backfire, you now realise that
I
that
now
was
realise,
police
yeah.
shooting.
I'm very careful with what I say because I don't want to conjecture, I don't want to read into things and spread misinformation. But yes, that's what we believe now.
The man who'd been stabbed, and thankfully we're here, he's not in a critical condition anymore, he's stabilised, so hopefully he'll be okay. But, you know, the trauma of what's happened to him, I'm sure will live with him his entire life. This was a savage attack on the streets of London by someone who was released from prison just a few days ago.
I find it really difficult because after that, I then went over to the poor bloke on the floor, and I could see like blood everywhere, and he was cradling his sort of lower right quadrant, and there were people compressing the wound, and the public were incredible, and I think there's someone that must have had some sort of medical knowledge there. And because I was going to the cinema, it's a stupid thing that I do, and it seems weird, but I always carry a blanket with me because I always like have a blanket in the cinema, and I knew that was in my bag, so I took it out and we sort of used it to compress the wound. And the poor guy wasn't lucid, his eyes weren't focusing, he was awake and alert, but in such distress, as you can imagine, as were the people around. And it was a really fraught situation, and people were sort of shouting at each other to try and help because they were obviously...
So you looked after him. You, as you say, remarkably had a blanket with you which you could use to try and compress the wound. You called an ambulance, but it took a long time.
It took far too long, and I don't want to pretend like I'm some sort of hero as well. Like that's not what I'm doing. Like everyone there was helpful, and after a while there was someone that was there, and they said, "Look, go and flag down the ambulance." I was on the phone to the paramedics for over half an hour while this poor innocent bloke was
bleeding on
the pavement.
What they're saying is the problem was that they believed that the terrorist had a suicide vest on him, and it turned out to be a hoax suicide device. But they were very worried, understandably, apparently, that if anyone came into that vicinity, they could themselves be in threat of their life. Now you know that. Do you think that explains the delay?
I am careful what I say, and I don't want to blame anyone because the services that were there were amazing and incredible. However, I spoke to one of the police officers that seemed quite distressed that the ambulances weren't there himself. He was a plain-clothed armed police officer. He said they were scrambling for an ambulance. The paramedics, the call handler could have just said, unfortunately, we're waiting until the scene is there. I also want to point out as well, I was still behind the police cordon at this point.
So they hadn't cleared you.
And that's not having a go at anyone whatsoever.
No, I understand, because what
you
you're
were
doing is
frustrated by the delay.
Facts.
Yeah, understandably. You were worried this guy might bleed out. I mean,
and he was not well, and you could tell he was in distress, and I genuinely just really hope that he makes it.
Yeah, and as Piers says, I mean, the update is that he is no longer in a life-threatening condition, so that's an enormous relief for you, and also a credit to you and the team of just passers-by, innocent passers-by.
I mean, you say everybody runs towards these things. Actually, they don't. A lot of people run away from them, understandably, because in that moment they're fearful for their own safety. You may not call yourself a hero, but actually to go towards something like that is a heroic act.
I don't. I think there were people that everybody pitched in. Everyone had their little jobs, even if it was people turning the buses round to get them safe. There were people helping and cradling the man, people working with the police. I've heard that local businesses were giving out water. People were really pitching in. And what is a terrible situation, I'm never going to pretend that it's not. It's also important to say that everybody banded together.
What do you feel? I mean, you're a local Streatham guy. What do you feel? This could be anywhere. I mean, this Streatham High Road, we both have a connection there. Susanna lives near it. I used to work on the Streatham and Tooting News and used to pound that very street many times on the way to the police station, actually. When you know somewhere like that, you realise this can happen anywhere. What do you feel when you find out that the person who perpetrated this carnage was let out of prison literally just a few days ago and is a jihadist?
I don't want to play kind of political football with it because I'm literally just an eyewitness and it doesn't really matter what I think. But I find it, something I will say, at the time, there was no way that I ever thought it was a terrorist incident. I thought it was just a mugging. And then I thought maybe it's something a little bit more serious. I never thought it was a terrorist incident. It makes me angry and it makes me frustrated, like I think so many people are. But I think just the mundanity of it, the regularity of it, the fact that it was just a normal street, it was a Sunday. And you know what? Also, what's really important, we showed pictures earlier on of people in that cafe that sort of said, can we have half an hour? There were people still riding their bikes, really annoyed. They're like, oh, can I just get through? Normal life goes on.
But that's because, and this is an awful aspect of this, we've become almost immune to it. You know, I was watching the news, it broke, and I went, God, another one. You know, this is happening with horrible regularity to the extent that we're starting to get a little bit immune. It reminds me of in America with the gun violence. You know, most people are kind of zoning out now because they just hear about it all the time. We don't want to get to that place, do we?
Well, I was just going to say, and Dave, you'll know this as well as any of us, it's also compounded by the gang violence, unfortunately, that afflicts, you know, that part of London.
Hugely.
You know, across the board, actually. And so there's that, you know, when I first heard someone's been stabbed, that's what I assumed it was.
Well, I think I've become immune to this because I was actually caught up in the London Bridge attacks most recently as well.
You were there? Or?
Yeah, so I was actually on the bridge when it happened because I work around there. I was doing some filming around there.
Well, Dave, they say lightning never strikes twice, but it sounds like it.
I feel like I'm a bad talisman.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a stand-up comic, and I'm not here to self-promote, and I'm not going to try and crack any funnies. But I was filming a show for that there.
So you were on London Bridge and now you've been on Streatham High Road when these two terror attacks have happened.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't tell us how often
regular they are.
Stuff is happening.